We're going to move forward with our next panel. I am incredibly excited about this one. It's STEM as the critical starting point for equal representation in AV tech. This panel is sponsored by Berkeley Lab. Our moderator is Dr. Faith Dukes. Dr. Dukes started her passion for science and education as an instructor with science while working on her PhD thesis in waste remediation using photocatalytic semiconductors. She went on to develop educational programs as the education coordinator at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Museum before transitioning to Washington, D.C. as an American Association for the Advancement of Science Technology Policy Fellow. Dr. Dukes is the K through 12 STEM Education Program Director at Berkeley National Lab. She holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in chemistry from Spelman College and a doctorate in physical chemistry from Tufts University, as well as a teaching certification from Georgetown University. Welcome, Dr. Dukes. We are also joined by Chow, a senior at Alameda Science and Technology Institute. Tatiana Lopez Siguenza, a junior at Antioch High School. And Ilce Perez, a senior at Tennyson High School. Welcome to the panel, and Dr. Dukes, I will turn this one over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the wonderful committee that invited us to be a part of today. I've been hearing so much information about the autonomous vehicle industry and learning a lot about how we can all do our part into thinking about representation and motivating each other to changing the industry. I am honored to be here with Michelle, Ilce, and Tatiana today. They are my favorite people to talk to because they are high school students who are very driven and have all of the new ideas that we should be listening to. And so I'm happy that they accepted the invitation to be a part of today's panel. And so I'll get started with a few questions and we'll talk a little bit about their background. So as you first answer this question, I'd like you to talk about a little bit of your motivation in the pursuit of STEM opportunities. You all are on this panel because you've been involved in either Berkeley Lab or PilotCity work-based learning opportunities in STEM. And I know you've all made great access, great presentations. You've all done great presentations and talked about the work that you've done. So before we get into those opportunities and talk about them, I just want to get into who motivated you or what motivated you to get into STEM. What's been your motivation and attraction to the area? And I'll start with Michelle.
Yeah, so one of my biggest motivations was from my computer science class. After learning about the basic computer science history and a little bit about code, the typical things that we would do in a classroom, our final project was to take this learning and kind of build whatever we wanted to from it. The prompt was simply just build something. And that I had a lot of fun with that because it's kind of the first time that I could take learning from the classroom into something that I could see in the real world. So I ended up building a robotic car from this, which is something I never imagined I could have done. But kind of this opportunity to take what we were learning in the classroom and make it into something else made me really excited in wondering, with all the other science that I was learning in other science classes, what else I could create with that.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. And that already says you're ready for the autonomous vehicle industry if you're already building robot cars right now. Tatiana, I'd like to go to you because you actually did a project with Velodyne Lidar for your PilotCity work-based learning opportunity. So can you tell us a little bit, we'll get to that piece, but can you tell us a little bit about what got you into even just to start to think about a career or opportunities in STEM?
I've always kind of been interested in engineering. So when the opportunity came to take a class at my high school and kind of have it as my pathway, I went into that class and learned lots more about just what engineering is about in general, and got to experience a lot of building and a lot of technology, which really kind of drove me to take this opportunity to have the PilotCity and a Velodyne Lidar internship and make the project.
Awesome. And Ilce, what's been your motivation?
Well, for me, throughout high school, science classes were a major influence in the development of my interest in STEAM, but the projects that I realized in my biomedical class ignited my passion for STEAM. In the class, my teacher, Ms. Kelly, exposed me to medical procedures such as Ilce test. Most projects were more like a real-life medical setting, and to see these experiments being performed closer to reality inspired me and made me eager to learn and discover more, not only about science, but about STEAM in general.
Awesome, thank you, Ilce. And so I've said, Ilce and Michelle were both a part of the Berkeley Lab Director's Apprenticeship program last summer, which focused on data science and an introduction to Python, as well as speaking with a number of scientists at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. And Tatiana has not only been a participant in PilotCity, but also an internship coordinator for additional students to help them in their projects later on last summer. And so I wanted to talk about your actual experience in those programs. How are they helpful and impactful in helping you to develop as a high school student and as someone who will be pursuing a future STEM profession? So Tatiana, I'll start with you, especially talking about your project with PilotCity.
So my internship was during 2019, so I was fortunate enough to be in person and in a building with other students also doing different internships for companies. So I got to kind of interact with others my age and open up a little bit, because before I was very shy and didn't want to talk to anybody. But after that experience, I kind of grew and got more like public speaking skills and skills just to talk in general to others. So that was kind of nice to have early on in my high school sort of career, I guess. And my project was to build an autonomous vehicle with my team for my city of Antioch.
Awesome. And that was to help students go to school, right? Thinking about taking classes?
Yes, because in our district, our schools are kind of separated into two separate learning experiences. Like, for example, at my school, we're more focused on tech and environmental sciences, and at the other school, they have like performing arts and law. So we wanted it to open up the schools a bit more so students can choose to do both or choose one or the other depending on what they really want to do.
Awesome. So using tech for greater good, we appreciate that. Ilce, to you, you talked a little bit about meeting some of the scientists at Berkeley Lab and how that was impactful. So do you want to share how being a part of the program influenced you this past year?
Yes, so being a part of Berkeley Lab made a big personal impact on me that made me break down the stereotypes and prejudices I used to believe, such as the idea that only white people who hold high positions and that minorities in STEM were very rare. As an English learner, I feared being unable to communicate with other students and scientists. However, this did not stop me. As a result, I was able to continue with the internship, and eventually panelists from different ethnicities and cultures showed up. And thanks to this diversity of cultures, I was able to learn from Javier Navarro, who taught me a big lesson, which is that language is not a boundary at Berkeley Lab, since we all speak the same language, the language of science. As an intern, I didn't have any problems with the language, even to the confidence the environment provided me with. And I came to understand the terminology used. I got to learn Python and coded an Arduino Uno, as well as I explored a small part of environmental science. And all these experiences leave me eager to study something related to STEAM because of all the valuable lessons and learnings at the apprenticeship.
Awesome. And Ilse, you're thinking about also economics to study, right?
Yes.
Awesome. And then Michelle, how about you? You were a part of PilotCity and the Berkeley Lab Director's Apprenticeship Program, and had the time to do an additional physics program at Berkeley Lab last summer. So you've been really busy and taking part in a lot of opportunities. How have those been impactful for you?
Yeah, so I would say building on the ability to kind of expand on things from explore science outside of the classroom, these programs allowed me to explore more niche topics, which is something I've discovered in science, that it's kind of hard to find something that you don't like or don't enjoy in science, because you can kind of make it your own and explore from there. So in Berkeley Lab, I got to explore genomics, and something else is material science. And then in the physics program, we did a lot on particle accelerators and particle science, which is something I never knew about or even thought I might enjoy. But these programs just gave me more exposure again to what's possible in science. And then I'd also say building a community with other high school students who are also interested in science to kind of go through this journey and explore science together and share opportunities and support one another.
Ilse, what would you tell other students about getting involved in a program like this or work-based learning programs? How should they take advantage of the opportunity?
Well, I will advise them to seize all the opportunities and to experiment with everything they have at their reach. And also, I will recommend them to ask questions without fear and learn from others, which is really important. And finally, to not limit themselves to explore only one subject. They may end up developing a deep interest in something new.
Awesome. We're all about being exploratory. And so Tatiana, I'm back to you. How would you tell a student to take advantage of an opportunity they have in front of them maybe this summer?
I would say if you have the opportunity, take it, even if you're just very little interested in it. It's always good to kind of expand, like as I said, and just try things out, you know, and just if you might end up liking it and not even know if you don't take the opportunity.
Michelle, I saw you shaking your head. Do you agree with those things and have something else you want to add?
Yeah, I completely agree with what's already been said. Just take on every opportunity that you can get and don't limit yourself to what you might enjoy and what you might be capable of doing.
So being a young woman in STEM, especially during this pandemic, has meant that you've had to have resiliency and determination and show leadership. And I'm so, again, happy to be on this panel with all of you who've done an amazing job in your respective programs. What would you tell institutions like Berkeley Lab and Velodyne Lidar and those other industry partners who may be putting together programs this year? How would you tell them to engage students that are like you and some of your classmates who think that they maybe can't do a program like you've done? What would you tell these institutions that they should be doing in order to encourage students to participate? So Michelle, I'll go back to you for that question.
Yeah, so I'll say with my experience with Berkeley Lab, personally, I heard about the lab before, but I didn't know about what they were doing, what their mission was and all that. And it always felt like something that was out of reach for me. And so seeing outreach and seeing educational opportunities directed towards high school students, that they were making that effort, and then learning about Berkeley Lab and what they were doing, and just building interest in their projects. And so for me, having that curiosity about what they were doing drove me to apply to the programs and drove me to just want to learn more from them.
Awesome. Ilse, how about you?
Well, in my opinion, I think these institutions need to advertise their programs directly to schools, right? As Michelle said, and by bringing a representative to encourage all the students to apply to these programs. And at the same time, the representative should present one of the main ideas of the program to the students through some type of experiment or workshop Therefore, students will have a memorable experience, and since they already work on a small part of it, by knowing that they could do it in the classroom, they will be more eager to apply to the real program.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Remembering to do direct outreach and bringing some of those components in so people get an example. It's hard to understand what you're going to do if somebody doesn't give you a little bit of a taste of what's going to happen. And Tatiana, what would you also say about your classmates? What do we need to do to make sure that we're connecting with them and encouraging them to take part in these activities?
For Velodyne Lidar, they came into our classroom and we actually got to like sort of play with the Lidar and experiment with it in our classroom, and they came and they talked to us. And another piece of advice I would probably say to just kind of talk about their experience, because a lot of people don't do that, like talking to students. So it seems like they've always, you know, kind of been up there, and then talking about their experience kind of makes it seem like everybody has a chance to be able to do things and be where they are.
Awesome. Thank you, Tatiana, for definitely getting into the next question that I also had for you, which is how important is it to see other people who look like you or have similar backgrounds as you've been navigating these STEM experiences?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
How important is it for you to see someone who looks like you or has the similar background as you've been getting people to come into your classroom and talk about STEM experiences?
In my classroom, we had, from Velodyne Lidar, we had Aaron and Sally. And when Sally walked into our classroom, I was like, oh my gosh, there's another like girl that's interested in like engineering. And she, you know, it's like up and talking to us about it. So it's very, I don't know what the word is, but inspiring, I guess, to be able to, because in my classroom, I was one of like 4 girls in like a 30 student classroom. So to see that there's other people interested in same things I am, not being just like the only one, it's nice to be able to see others.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely representation is important. How about you, Michelle? How important has that been for you to see other people?
Yeah, to build on what Tatiana said, it's been very important because personally, I feel like STEM is already a really challenging space to be in. And when you're struggling through things, it makes it more challenging to feel like you're the only one there that looks like you. And it can feed into kind of notions that like you don't belong there because of certain external reasons that really don't matter. And so seeing other women and seeing other people who look like me is just reassuring to know that it's possible, and we've all kind of gone through the same struggles together and we still go through them, but that we can make it through and we can still explore all the science that we want to.
Awesome. And Ilce, you mentioned Javier Navarro from Berkeley Lab, who was really a significant point in your time in the Berkeley Lab program. But what do you want to say about the importance of representation?
Well, for me, it has a great importance because it was a great inspiration to see other people who started on the same path as me, and to see that they achieved their goals gives me a feeling of satisfaction and desire to move forward with my dreams. And Javier Navarro was an inspiration for me because he came from Mexico, as I did.
Awesome. And so I want to go to our next question, and I might have a follow-up question to this one. But starting with Michelle, what are you most looking forward to studying, discovering, or inventing post-high school?
So I'm currently really excited about the future of space and kind of everything that's going on in the space industry. And so I'm currently hoping to pursue aerospace engineering as a major and to kind of explore the intersection of my interest in astronomy and also engineering. So I'm just excited about the future of space travel and kind of everything that's going on in space.
Awesome. Ilce, how about you?
Well, after high school, one of my plans is to connect Mexico and the United States, since both nations are like siblings. However, both countries are always fighting, and I plan to do this through a civil association where Mexicans bring culture, language, and history to anyone who wants to learn about it, and the US collaborates with Mexico by sending firefighter equipment to firefighter volunteers in Mexico. Since they don't get paid, they regularly need equipment, and also it's well known that they play an important role in saving people's lives and stopping forest fires. And by protecting the forest, they protect the symbol of immigration, the monarch butterfly, an insect being one of the species that connects both nations.
Awesome. That's great. You're already getting to not only STEM, but getting into the intercontinental affairs. So getting into government and thinking about that. So we're always thinking about different careers and different pathways for STEM professionals. And so I love to hear that. And Tatiana, how about you?
I'm looking forward to more going in depth with sort of engineering and possibly programming, and continuing me and my team's project from our internship, which we can learn more about just sort of how everything works and more just engineering in general.
And so I just want to follow up with the last thing. Again, you've already shared about your what we can do as institutions in terms of connecting, but I wanted you to be able to share anything else that you'd like to say, you know, about, especially this year, you all have been on Zoom for the past year and doing your school and studies. And I know you've missed out on a few things, especially those of you, Ilce and Michelle, who are seniors. But what do you think we could do to support you all as students? Again, in, you know, this space of things that you have missed. So thinking about as students are getting back into the classroom, what are some things that we could do, not even just to say a summer internship, but things that we can do and things that we could help out with as you're transitioning back into in-person activities. So Michelle, I'll start with you. Just anything that in all we could do to support students.
I would say like events like this, where we kind of create spaces to come together and kind of uplift each other by sharing advice and sharing experiences. And then also I feel like remote learning and that kind of stuff is going to go on for a little bit longer still. So don't let virtual experiences limit what you think is possible. And so with Berkeley Lab, they've been shipping out stuff, so we still get the chance to interact with things physically and kind of work together remotely, but ourselves, we're still building projects on our own. And so kind of embracing being online, and there's a lot of other things that we can do online that are that wouldn't be possible in person too. So there's opportunities there.
Ilce, I'll go to you. What can we do as we're still staying online and being in remote kind of opportunities to help students?
Well, I will say that I agree with Michelle. That she said it's correct for me, and that is what I was about to say. But I would say that more interaction with more items, and I would say more work with hands-on things, because since we are in this digital era, we don't get to expose ourselves to work with something that is physical. So I will say that more interactions as well, because we mostly are at school, but we are not like giving our participation or talking to others. So
awesome. We'll keep sending out things. So that's a good one, and making sure things are hands-on. And Tatiana, I'll ask you that final thing. What should we be doing to help students as they're continuing remote learning?
I know it's like what has been said before, it's pretty difficult just kind of sitting in front of a screen, not being able to interact with others, like with project and stuff we would do in school or teamwork. So events just events in general, just to kind of, for everybody to sort of come together, like Michelle said, and just be able to interact some way, even if it is over Zoom, just be able to talk and socialize with others, at least a little bit.
Awesome. I know we keep getting the feedback is always icebreakers and socializing and collaboration so that you all can talk to each other and make sure you get a chance to learn who the other person is, especially if you're not going to the same high school. So that's been really important for us. So I want to thank our panelists for giving some great answers and talking with us about their experiences. I just want to give a few words before we end, and I'll share back with our host, Salika, that the pandemic has revealed a number of inequities that we knew were there before, and that we can no longer ignore. And as students transition back to school, we need to be mindful that they are still going to need our support and that they have lost a year, as everyone on this panel has said, of in-person hands-on learning. And so what can we do as industry partners to support teachers who have done a tremendous job of pivoting and quickly adjusting their classrooms and curriculum? And how can we make sure that we provide learning opportunities and access to authentic experiences that allow them to inform themselves about future careers? And finally, as just a nation, how can we make sure that students have access to the internet, to hardware, computers, to make sure that if we were to ever go back to a situation that requires remote learning, that they would already be equipped to take on those activities and to smoothly transition from either a hybrid or fully virtual or in person. And so I'm thanking the students, and thank you to everyone who's invited us to be a part of today's session. And we'll turn it back over to our host.
Thank you so much. I have to tell you, I am so encouraged. I think our future is in great hands when I hear from these students. So thank you very much for your time. Dr. Dukes, before you go, we heard from the students, but what inspires or motivates you? What allows you to carry on the work that you do every day?
Oh, that's a great question. And I'll say, I've said this before, I'm actually a NASA kid. I did a program called NASA Sharp Plus when I was in 17, and I went off to Michigan for 8 weeks to do research. And that really informed my thinking about whether or not I could do research as an undergraduate and a graduate student. And I was also a NASA-wide scholar and a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation recipient that paid for my undergraduate education and most of my graduate education. So I'm a firm believer in the support that students get and how those opportunities can push them to the next level. And so I wanted to say I got to that level and I love learning, but I wanted to mesh those spaces of learning about research, which I still get to do at one of the most innovative and well-known research institutions in the world, while also pulling up the gate to allow everybody else behind me in. And so that's what motivates me every single day to do the work.
And we thank you for that. And then I guess finally, you talked about supporting and encouraging and creating an opportunity for students like these wonderful students we have today to continue to learn and to innovate. We have lots of representatives from corporations all over the country in the STEM fields today. If there was one specific thing you could have an ask, sort of this Christmas come early, what would you ask of these corporations?
As I said before, that support of, one, the teachers. We have to really support our educators who are helping to lead this education of students, and supporting them in terms of what happens in the classroom so that they get not only financial support, but also the help to really connect students from the concepts they are learning in the classroom to the workplace. So that's one. And like I said, the second one is everybody needs access to, if we've learned nothing else, people have double and triple cable bills right now because they've had to increase their speeds on their internet access. And so if nothing else, we should also be thinking about how can we provide that across this nation to make sure it doesn't matter what kind of program we put together. It could be the best program in the world, but if a student does not have access to the internet or to a computer in order to access that opportunity, then our programs are null and void. So those are some main things that we should be thinking about as organizations to support, whether that's in thinking about infrastructure and support, or thinking about how we're helping in a local community.
Well, thank you so much. As a child of an educator, I can assure you, I realize how hard you work. So I salute you and the educators across America who are working so hard with our students in this time and under difficult circumstances. So thank you all for being with us today.
Thank you.